All right, everybody, you're here. You're in Introduction to the Mini Memoir Method. Welcome. And today we're going over how to build compelling stories and stories that you can put in books as and chapters.
Yeah, here we are with all of our books.
Well, actually, these aren't all of them. We have more. Both of us have how-to books, but there are memoirs. I'm Carla King. And I have been writing short for many years. I was a tech writer and a journalist and early blogger. So I learned to write short and fast. And so it's very easy for me to do that. And then the harder thing for me was to put it all together in a book. And so it was amazingly easy once you have 20, 30 stories to hone them down and put them into a book with an arc. So I've written an anthology of various stories from my travels called Stories from Elsewhere. American Borders was a trip around the US on a cranky Russian sidecar motorcycle. I had lots of adventures breaking down in small towns all around the USA on that. And that became a book in 2010. And now I'm trying to finish my China Road Motorcycle Diaries, a similar story from China.
Which I love. It's a really good book, folks. So when she gets it all together, it'll be for sale and you guys can read it. I love it. She does things that I could never do, so I admire Carla very much, my adventure friend.
Let's talk about your books.
The book I wrote 30 years ago, Don't Call Me Mother, it's about three generations of mothers and daughters, mothers who abandoned their daughters and how we worked with that. The picture keeps changing, Carla.
Oh, it does? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Try
it's
to fix that. Go ahead and
the
talk and I will fix that.
okay. So I wrote that not knowing at all what I was doing and created some things we're going to talk about today, actually called turning points and such, to help me write that book. The other memoir, Song of the Plains, is from my adult perspective, and it takes the story further where I write in the point of view at times of my mother and grandmother and take that experimental way of exploring who they were and looking for compassion for them as an adult. And then I branched into historical fiction. I tried for 7 years not to write this book because I didn't think I could write a novel. But finally, I just got over myself and jumped in and had a really good coach. That book came out in 2023, and I'm really happy about it. I'm going to write a follow up book to that book coming up soon. We are welcoming you to this special method that we created to help focus in on how to write a short story with an arc. We'll save your questions for the end, but you can also put them in the chat because we want to be sure and have you gather them when you're ready. We're going to do some writing. Get your notebooks and pens out if you write by hand, which we applaud and encourage.
Linda Joy, how do you feel?
I feel excited about this, but when I was first writing, I didn't quite know how to proceed, what I should do first, what came next. And so we're going to talk about some of that today. And having taught for so many years, and just even the other day, somebody was writing, answering a post that I was on and talking about. It's just a little story. I'm not sure the story is worth telling. We hear a lot, but every story matters. We are actually walking history books, and our story will educate and inspire other people. And it's good for us as humans to find a way to capture our experiences in words. It's tasting the story we lived a second time.
Yeah, and as we go through this list, you can put in the chat. We would love to know like where you are if you don't know where to start, or number two, you're not sure about your story. Number three, right?
How to choose,
Are you
right?
lost and struggling to figure out what story to write. And yeah, go ahead and put in the chat. You feel like, are you frustrated? Who is not finishing their book? You think you'll never finish. It is a struggle to finish a whole book. And has the muddy middle swallowed you whole? You know what the muddy middle is? It's all those stories in the middle. You've got the beginning and the end, and you're struggling to tell the stories that are of interest in the middle. And this is what we're addressing today. Yes, we have some number 4s, 2s, and 3s. Jolene, yes, I've been working on a story for 10 years and you've been writing short in Substack, and that helps a lot. That helps you break through and figure out what stories are you want to tell. And when you want to tell them and you're compelled to tell them, if you've hit a nerve and you've got a little fear inside yourself, you know that's going to be of interest to other people. Fenton has hundreds of stories. This is a question for you later, Linda Joy, maybe in the discussion. Lorna says, how do I avoid re-traumatizing myself?
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about that.
Okay, thank you for all your answers. We'll definitely get to these in the discussion area.
Like I was saying earlier, I have a project myself of finding in a longer book some stories, but sometimes we're carrying around smaller stories that we don't quite know what to do with or how to figure out how to make it work as a story. And so we're going to get into the things you need in order to have those moments turn into a story through how you write them and put them together. But a memory by itself isn't quite a story. The things that we write in our journals, they're so personal to us. We need to shape them and work with those moments that you may have captured in a journal to make a story. So here's the basics of it. A real scene. A scene is where something is happening that matters. And so you want to look at where's this moment of meaning, and then the narrator that shapes the story. And we'll get into that. And of course, the story, all stories have a structure, and most of them have a very satisfying format for stories is a beginning, middle, and end with some kind of resolution. It might not be tied up with a bow, but some kind of resolution or ending. It feels like an outward breath. It can be very subtle.
I'd like to address some reasons to write short. The first one is to find your most powerful stories, because we all know that story that people ask us to tell over and over again, or the story that you feel so compelled to share. So you can find those and start experimenting with those stories instead of writing the whole book in hundreds and hundreds of pages of just blah, 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 just getting it out. Although the getting it out draft is very necessary as well. You can share them now while the book is still forming. We all often want to share our stories. That's what storytelling is all about, getting feedback. And while the book it takes years sometimes for the book to come out, as some of you have noticed. So you can share the little stories within weeks, within months. And so that's very satisfying. So you can test your stories with writing groups, with friends, with family, and then maybe dive into Substack, share them with the world, and test them with real readers to see if people like them anecdotally, the people you know, or those thumbs up buttons on the Substack and other places. There are a lot of you doing that, so congratulations. And when you write short, you can hone your craft. We teach a structure, the mini memoir method, so that you can get your ideas down and out very quickly, and you can write faster and collect the stories and then decide which one goes into your book. But honing your craft, your sentence structure, making your sentences better, more beautiful, editing, self-editing, getting feedback, that's all part of it too. Can also clarify the shape, the arc of your whole memoir. In the big class, we won't address this today. You have a middle at the beginning, the middle, and the end, a climactic moment about 3/4 of the way through, all that. You can clarify the shape using your stories as little postcards and just shuffling them around, right? And that can be fun as well. The other thing is to promote your book. You can promote yourself as an author before you publish your big book. Publish your book, launch your book with stories, and then publish small stories during and after your launch so that you can attract people to read your big book, your memoir that you're selling. So those are all strategies. Those are all really good reasons. And if you have other good reasons, put them in the chat. I'd like to know if you can think of more.
So I mentioned the turning point method. I've been teaching it now for many years. Carla and I both think in this same way in terms of finding these particular moments. And Carla is so good at that for her shorter pieces. It's working well for her longer memoir. So this is the thing, this moment of significant change. So we'll talk in more depth about it in the longer class about how to create a timeline for this and everything. But it's a moment where there's a shift in consciousness, awareness, thoughts. The inner self is going, wait a minute, or aha, or oh, I understand, or I need to do something different. Whatever it is, it can be an internal thing. It can be also an action where suddenly you just go, here, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm going to do. And it can get the engine rolling about the story. So it's really important to have these elements in thinking about your turning point. So where did this moment take place? For instance, country, street, out in the landscape, out in the world, on a mountain, a sports field, wherever it might be, a specific place. I always ask the question, where are your feet? Where are you standing? To find this moment, because that'll ground us in the moment, and that's important. And then including how old you are, the year, because that affects the perceptual reflections of the narrator to be clear about the age or the year. The year gives context to the larger world that we live in. Who is with you? Is somebody with you? Usually we're in a scene with other people, not always, but who is that? Name a couple people, put down your other characters. What happened? Again, being clear what this moment was and reflect upon it, meaning your thoughts, your feelings. So often people write the action stuff and leave out how they thought and how they felt. And they'll say to us, and we're going to dig into how to help you with this in the longer class, but uh, they'll say, I don't remember what I was thinking. No, but you know yourself. And so as a writer, we have to go further than the specific exact memory to try to remember when we're 9 years old. We might remember it. But now, as the narrator and the writer, you dig into that and find that meaning and find it because you know yourself. Okay, get out your pens and papers or wherever you're going to write, what you're going to write on. This is a chance to grab that moment, grab that turning point moment that you think about. Sometimes we have these obsessive, I don't know about, I imagine other people do too, these moments you just keep thinking about, and oh, maybe there's a story. Oh, I don't know. And so we're going to time this. I can get my timer ready here. Also, it's important as we just start now is write the first thing that comes into mind and do what we call a free write. Don't edit, just keep writing, writing, writing for how about 3 minutes, Carla? Okay.
Sounds good.
Now, this is the moment your life changed course in some way. Something important happened. Nothing was quite the same afterward. And we're going to start now for 3
And
minutes.
I'd like to just add that this doesn't have to be a dramatic thing. Like I had a motorcycle accident that was very dramatic, but it could just be an internal shift, right? It could be a realization, it could be something that happened with another person or an animal, anything that just made a shift in yourself. So really concentrate on that one shift.
All right.
Yeah, that's 3 minutes. I know you just feel like you got started, didn't you?
So much can get done in 3 minutes. It shocks people. But yeah, bring your piece to a close now. So we're going to move on.
If you want to raise your hand and just share for 30 seconds, Elaine?
Yeah, am I sharing the incident, right? That was the turning point. Is that what you're asking, right? That was a good experience for me because it helps with shaping my chapter, with understanding what I'm writing, understanding my chapter and what is that
Right.
part in there.
Also, Elaine Stevens, you had your hand up. Sorry. You want to go ahead,
And
Elaine?
then I've
Yeah.
unmuted Leslie,
Okay.
Elaine.
Turning Point was a phone call June 29th, 1967. It was the Jane Mansfield accident on Highway 90 where all three people got killed.
Oh,
And one of them was my fiance. I was carrying his child.
Whoa.
It's called the phone call in the first draft of the memoir. You know, we're of Greek background, so needless to say, it was not a serene moment of absorption and processing. It was screaming and crying and Greek prayers, and all of us were like, it was an absolutely nightmarish that went on. It still goes on because the research and the dual reality of writing memoir.
that's also an example of a good hook because people need to read on. They want to know what happened. So that's thank you for sharing that.
I like your term, the dual reality of writing a memoir. Thank you for that, because we really are experiencing two time frames when we're writing. We have the now and we have the then, and it's weird, but that's true. And yeah, thank you for mentioning that term.
You're welcome. I published an article on that in one of the Southern magazines.
Oh,
thank
put
you.
put that link in the chat. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
It's always good to have this exercise.
And Leslie?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just
Thanks,
trying to wait.
Leslie and Barbara have their hands up.
So I published a memoir about 5 years ago after 30 years of work that was focused on following my father's footsteps and discovering the experience that changed him in Hiroshima and lived there. I haven't been able to write since, and this exercise turned me to focusing on more personal events for me. The particular one that came up was the moment when my daughter was a baby and my husband was suffering some mental problems and the baby was crying. I asked him to get her for me, and he threw me down on the bed by my neck and said he'd take care of it all right. And this had not been a history of these events. And I went and got my baby and took her downstairs and nursed her and realized that I was not going to feel safe in the house again with my own husband. So that was a turning point. And
big. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Thanks, Leslie. And Barbara.
Okay, here is a question about the turning point, where it's like a distant turning point. And in my case, it was when Mount St. Helens erupted.
Oh.
And then there was a whole domino of like the ash came down and filled the swimming pool, and I came home and helped empty the swimming pool that fall. And then my mother rolled her wheelchair into the swimming pool and banged her head and went into a coma and so there was a whole domino theory. And so it's like how that volcano seems like such a symbolic turning point, not an immediate one. So how do you deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, you have a series of important moments you're telling us. It's the turning point that leads to another turning point with your mother that leads to another turning point. In a short story, though, you can have more than one moment. It's and we'll get into this when we're looking at the longer version of a story, not just the moment, but the whole story that you want to put together and figure out beginning, middle, and end. So that's what you're suggesting, I think, is that you would need to work with that.
Well, thank you, Barbara. That was really a really wonderful segue into what makes it a story, because you've got turning points, and stories are turning points after turning points, and books have turning points after turning points. So you could have a turning point per chapter. So when you start reading books, you'll start to notice the turning points in the books. So this is actually where the mini memoir method begins. And while I'm talking, I'd like you to think about that turning point you were just writing about and the strongest story that you have in mind right now, because you're the narrator and the narrator reflects on what happens. And it isn't just the things that happen, it's just that you're making also sense of what happened. So when you're looking back, the narrator is understanding what it meant. So when you're writing the story, this means that this present voice now knows more than the person in the moment did. So your old person is a character, like your old self is a character in the book. This is really fun to think about, and it's something that we spend quite a lot of time on in the 4-week course. And then on top of that is emotion. And emotion layered on top of this action, motion, and emotion will give your story the meaning that it needs. It moves you toward realization and moves the reader toward realization as well. So this is when you reveal something very tender and true about yourself or the other people in your story. And in doing so, you've really touched a universal truth. It touched something in you, and it touches something in the reader. So in a great story, emotion travels along with action. So you've got motion and emotion, action, reaction, emotion. And then finally, a resolution. When you read a great story, you go, oh, wow, right? I learned something. And a resolution doesn't need a tidy ending, happily ever after. In fact, most good stories don't end with happily ever after. It ends with question that the reader can ponder. These are true stories we're telling. These aren't romance novels. So when we say a resolution lands emotionally, we mean that the reader is nodding along when they're reading and thinking, oh my gosh, I've been there, or oh my gosh, I could go there, or oh wow, I felt that, or I've never looked at it that way before. So that's a satisfying feeling. And it requires detailed honesty from the narrator, the memoirist, the writer. And that's what I mean by a resolution that lands.
Yeah, we're talking about the psychology here. Of course, I've been a therapist forever. These deeper moments are part of who we are and what shapes us.
So, for example, I've picked this story from Brevity magazine where you can find a lot of small little memoirs. I love this story that you can read later. Save this for later. It'll be in the follow-up email as well. But this story by Laura Udick is about visiting her mother in a care home, and she has dementia, and she's drifted back to 1985 and thinks Lori's a friend that she can confide in. And she wants to say to her mother, it's going to be okay, Mom, but she can't, because every sentence that she says about it's going to be okay ends with her father dying. And so the turning point of this whole story is just that she shifts in her chair. She shifts and starts listening to her mother, and all the action is in her head. She's thinking about her 16-year-old self when she was going off with her boyfriend on a motorcycle, when her dad was having an affair, and then she thinks about herself and her husband who doesn't have a job, and herself whose son is failing math. And it's just the quietest but most profound turning point. And I think that when you read this, if you're thinking my story isn't dramatic enough or important enough, I think this will give you the energy and the permission to write your own story. So what the author makes of the situation, the fear, the grief, the love, and the dread is all in this story. And I found myself nodding along to this, even though I have not been in that situation. And that's exactly what Linda Joy is going to help you with in the next slide. She's going to talk about emotion.
Get your writing materials out also again. So the what happened version, well, what happened and when and where, and that's the grounding part and the action part, and we need that. Many students that I've worked with, they struggle sometimes to find the emotion, like we were talking about earlier, the making sense part. So that's when the story deepens and connects in what Carla was just talking about, kind of the universal message for all of us is meaning. What is the meaning? We're all looking to try to understand life better. In every story, there's something that gives us a message as a reader. So as a writer, we learn how to shape that story and include that meaning. So we're going to have you write for 2 minutes this time, just in what is the turning point moment. In that moment, such and such happened, and I thought, or I reflected upon, or I tried to understand X or Y or Z. Okay, so that's your 2 minutes. All right.
That feel good?
So we were quiet for a few minutes. Anybody want to say anything before we go on? We can put it, you can put it in the chat.
We have a few more slides before the Q&A.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to get through that so we have plenty of time for your questions and comments. Linda Joy has created so many good deep exercises for us. So we'll do that in the 4-week class as well. So with that, sit with that and maybe work on it later today while you still have the energy. We're going to get off in about 15 minutes.
That's amazing what a little writing can bring up. So when people say, just to say this, I don't have time to write or I can't write, give yourself permission to write 2 to 4 minutes like we just did today. Something will happen. Something always happens. Give it a whirl.
Something always happens. You've got just a little tiny glimpse of Udik's turning point, that quiet moment. And you just wrote one of yours, and some of you have very dramatic turning points, but some of you have very quiet turning points. And that's just a little bit of step 1 of the mini memoir method that we hope to have you join us for Tuesdays in June, so that by June 30th, you have a story you can publish. And this has happened. Some of you have already taken short form storytelling classes from us, and some of you have started Substacks and published stories. So we're always so thrilled to hear that, because it does work. A little bit about the mini memoir method. The 4 weeks gives you 4 steps with us. And it begins with is finding the right story and the doorway into your story, which we just did a little bit. And then from there, we shape the story, we develop it, build the arc from the opening to meaning to a resolution. We talk about beginning, middle, and end, the climactic moment, all of that story structure, plot stuff, in an easy to figure out way. And then finesse it. We go through the story over and over again. And I'm saying the royal we. You do it with feedback, with adding sensory detail, touch, taste, sound, smell. Sight is the obvious one. Improving your language, reading it aloud, enriching it, and cut what doesn't serve. Cut what doesn't serve. So overwriting is a lot of what I love to encourage people to do. And then it's because it's easier to cut than it is to add.
People need permission to write longer, and then know that you will learn how to be your own good editor too. And that's part of what we'll be talking about.
And then how to publish small to your friends, family, to your mailing list if you have one, and how to publish big, how to self-publish, how to just get your story out into the world. So the nice thing about this is writing short, it's a repeatable method to creating story after story after story. So once you learn it, you can apply this method again and again and again until you have an anthology of stories, a Substack of stories, a book of stories, or all 3.
Right.
So here's what it costs and how to sign up. It does start June 9th. 23rd and 30th. It's this exact same time. It is at 9 a.m. It's a 90-minute course. We have a presentation like this, and then we have plenty of time for sharing, for Q&A. And there's 4 live sessions, but we start a week early, really by joining a community and discussion group that you can find fellow writers. You have lifetime access to the class recordings. It's in the Writing and Publishing Circle, which is a larger membership with a lot of freebies and a lot of connection. And if you join before May 30th, you can get $50 off. And here is the sign up link. And maybe Linda Joy, you can copy this into the chat. One of the wonderful things about this community is that people do participate so much. in the community, and we trade stories. It is a safe community with rules. I've created a how to be a good community member, how to critique a story kindly with constructive feedback. And people have really gotten a lot out of this. And some of you who have been in the previous workshops know that this has been a boon. And some of you are still talking to each other from last year. You can find writing partners as well. When you check out, I wanted to show you what it looks like. So when you check out, there's this little tiny little coupon code area that's very hard to see. So that's where you put the coupon code. You'll see the price showing $397, $50, and it's 50 OFF. To get that. Hit apply, and you'll see the price drop to $347. So it ends this Saturday, which is a few days from now. So we hope you'll join us. And remember, if you want to add on one-on-one editing from me and Linda Joy, that's $200 for up to 2,000 words. And many of you have done that before. And I just love doing this as well. So you can add that at checkout if you want. And that's it. And we hope to see you next Saturday joining, or before June 9th. So here's how to get your spot: bit.ly/many memoir. I'll give you these slides today too. These are all clickable links, including the brevity story, etc. Thank you so much. And it's now time for the Q&A and discussion. If you have any questions, we have plenty of time. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen and we'll all get into the same room and we can start. You can put the question in the chat. It would be great if you put the word question before question so that we can easily find the questions. Tracy. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how long are the stories typically, and in the mini memoir, and they translate to chapters? Is that the concept, is having them translate to chapters?
It's all of the above, actually, Tracy. Thanks for asking, because many of you are working on a whole book and you may have 30 chapters already and you're going, wait, I have 30 stories. Are all of them suitable for being short stories? And the answer to that is probably no. You can create some stories from your bigger memoir, or you can create little stories on the same topic right now and eventually make them chapters in your memoir. Because oftentimes, as you know, because you're an avid reader, that the end of a chapter contains a cliffhanger, right? So that's a very different treatment. But yes, they contribute to each other. And a lot of people also, like for my China Road Motorcycle Diaries, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really belong in my memoir. In 1995, there were blue supply trucks that were trundling through the country on these dirt roads. And the blue supply trucks are an interesting story, but they don't belong in the memoir. Like, how did these trucks get from one village to another when there were no bridges and the roads were all washed out, and the whole transportation system? And some of them that I ran across were like 4x4s. The mechanics of them were very interesting. And I'm a mechanic, and a lot of my readers love that mechanical stuff. So I can put in my subs or in a short story a lot of stories that contain that kind of material that just doesn't belong in my book. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I would just follow up with, do you think these fit in a mosaic memoir? I'm just learning about, I don't know what a mosaic memoir is, but someone said my work would be good for mosaic memoir. I'm not sure.
We're definitely going to talk about the different kind of memoirs in the 4-week course, but that is definitely a very interesting kind of new trend. And I think people like mosaic memoirs as much as they like anthologies of short stories, because you get bounced around in a lot of interesting ways. So thanks for asking that question. That's interesting.
Thank
if
you.
you want to put what you're writing in the chat, I'd love to know more about that, a little bit more about the topic.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah. So many things to think about, but mostly we need to give ourselves permission to write. Often we need to give ourselves permission to write the thing that we haven't written and we want to write. Sometimes it taps on our shoulders. For me, it kind of whispers in my ear when I'm quiet, with a little invitation. And I mean, even though I've written several books, there are stories I have not written that I need to give myself permission to go ahead and write because it feels like a small story. I have a first love story, and I go, well, everybody had first love, and so no big deal kind of thing. But when I tell people about the story, they go, oh, yeah, you should write that, And so that's the kind of thing we talk about in the group, too, are the stories. Maybe you have one ready or you're thinking about it, but by being together in a group, it's very encouraging for those little bits of creative moments to come forward, because we can talk about, sometimes we need to talk about it first in order to figure out that we do need to write it. So that's the thing about community. Also, the community, Carla, people talk about things there too. Having the ability to discuss, I can't really finish something without talking about it with somebody. I mean, I need to have that interaction. So that's built into the class.
It is. Let me answer a few questions in the chat, Margaret. Can you add the one-on-one editing later, or does it have to be when you sign up?
That. Yeah.
You can add it later. So yeah, you can check with either of us. We're going to talk about Substack and publishing anthologies and where to publish in the 4th class. And so we'll go through all those details. We have lists of small magazines that are welcoming to new writers or emerging writers or people who haven't been published before. So we'll discuss that as well. Let me talk about, Ron, your fiction versus autofiction. This class is for any kind of short story. It can be fiction as well. We know that sometimes it's hard to write about people who are still alive. So you may go over into fiction just to protect them for the moment. Let's see, Patricia, mini books. Would it be effective to publish nonfiction mini books prior to publishing a larger memoir? Short stories and novella length books are all on the table these days. With electronic publishing, your book can really be 80 pages to 1,000 pages if you want it to be. I do not recommend it. I did have somebody who told me that they had a 1,000-page book, and I was like, maybe you should break that up into 4 books.
Find the arc and do that.
You should write some short pieces first to see if this is really the kind of topic that is going to be popular. Hey, Kali, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for taking my question.
Yeah.
My question is, because I'm in my early 30s, I guess I have this idea that memoirs are like something that you do once and then you have your memoir. But it holds me back because then I'm like, well, how do I write if it's my one shot? And do you know what I mean? So I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Oh, you can have 10 memoirs. I've got like 20 memoirs in my mind. Mine are bracketed by travels, but you can also have journeys, work journeys, relationship journeys,
internal journeys,
addiction journeys. What other kind of journeys are there?
Think of Mary Carr has 3, a woman named Reina Grande. She has 5 memoirs, different memoirs. People are grabbing these different moments and not only writing short, but they're writing full-on memoirs and giving themselves permission to go ahead and do that. I think in the old days, we're like, oh, well, you're one memoir, one and done. That is just not true anymore. And so you got to give yourself permission, I think, that it's okay.
And if there's overlapping themes or you feel like, I didn't do that enough justice or something, like maybe in the future, I feel like, what the hell? Like I would write that differently. Is that possible too, to rehash, or it's not something you guys?
Well, I did that in my second memoir. I had the child point of view in the first memoir. In the second memoir, I went over some similar territory to ground the reader so they could go on beyond that. But I'm writing it through the adult point of view. But it was the same territory developed further in a second memoir. And I know other people are doing that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let her rip.
And I'm putting thank you, Kali. I'm putting the link to the class in the chat. You will get a follow-up later today. And we really thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for all your interactions and questions, and really hope to see you in the class coming up. And in the meantime, just give yourself permission to write these stories, unleash the stories you have been marinating, and work on them. See you.
Thank you. Hope to see you in
all.
June.
Yeah. Bye-bye.